Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering panic as $2.1 million awarded for false claim of toxic whiteness. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. Coming from the New York Post, New York City to pay $2.1 million in race discrimination settlement with 3 educators over toxic whiteness accusations. And what's the origin of all this craziness? Going all the way back to New York Post 2019 article, bombshell suit claims Carranza's toxic whiteness purge cost Department of Education executives their jobs. And what caused the settlement? Also from the New York Post. Going back to January 2024, New York City Department of Education employees who claim racial discrimination over demotions can pursue bombshell $90 million lawsuit, a judge ruled. That meant the judge said, we're not going to dismiss this. We will go forward with this case. That forced New York City to say, okay, well, yeah, toxic whiteness. Okay, how much do we have to really pay you? Let us write you a check. Of course, it's not the personal money of the racist person who accused these poor women of being toxically white or whatever their agenda was. But it's the city's money and they had to write a check. And from Zero Hedge, explain to me why we don't have the right to exist? Eva Villardinger-Brooke warns whites against massive demographic changes in their native countries. Is that toxically white to just want to exist? It's not. It seems really wrong to identify people by their skin color and call them toxic or poisonous just because they have a certain skin color. This shouldn't even be a topic in Western civilization. We know right from wrong, and we know this toxic accusation is wrong. But we're stuck with it, so we've got to fight back against it, at least call it out as wrong if there's nothing else we can do. We can't just let this go. And here's the basis for the original lawsuit that these ladies won in a settlement. From the New York Post, bombshell suit claims Carranza's toxic whiteness purge cost Department of Education executives their jobs. School's Chancellor Richard Carranza's crusade against toxic whiteness at the City Department of Education created an us versus them culture that saw 3 longtime officials demoted in favor of less qualified persons of color, according to a blockbuster $90 million lawsuit. Quote, if you draw a paycheck from the Department of Education, get on board with my equity platform or leave, Carranza thundered to employees assembled in the rotunda of the agency's Lower Manhattan headquarters last June, according to the suit. That would have been all the way back in 2018. That totalitarian threat was just the most direct example of Carranza's push to overhaul the leadership at the top and attitude through the Department of Education since he took the helm last year. Quote, under Carranza's leadership, the Department of Education has swiftly and irrevocably silenced, sidelined, and punished plaintiffs and other Caucasian female Department of Education employees on the basis of their race, gender, and unwillingness to accept their colleagues' hateful stereotypes about them, according to the group's lawyer, Davida Perry. Plaintiff Lois Herrera, who started at the Department of Education in 1986 as a guidance counselor, which is not a high-level position, was able to work her way up to lead its Office of Safety and Youth Development. She claimed in her lawsuit that she saw a sea change almost immediately after Mayor Bill de Blasio appointed Carranza in April 2018. A month later, then the executive director of the Department of Education's Office of Equity and Access purportedly told white attendees of a training seminar that they had to take a step back and yield to colleagues of color and recognize that values of white culture are supremacist, Herrera heard from a fellow administrator according to the lawsuit. And that June, Carranza delivered his stay or go edict to address a flurry of recent staffing changes among department brass, including Robinson's promotion to Deputy Chancellor of School Climate and Wellness. And at another scheduled event in August, Herrera saw Robinson's alleged attitude for herself. Quote, if you've been with the Department of Education for more than 20 years, you are responsible for the problem, Robinson, who is black, allegedly said. That's a horrible thing to say. And when people commit themselves to any kind of service for 20 years, especially working for the government, especially working in education, that's a great person right there. Usually they're very dedicated. They've given up a lot of things and they've built their entire life and their career for service to education. I have family who worked in education for pretty much their entire professional lives, in teaching, in administration, in helping other people to perform well on their jobs and to help I don't know how many tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of students. It is absolutely unacceptable for them to be doing this in school systems. Despite being Harvard educated and having been recognized as recently as 2017 for contributing to the safest year on record in city schools, Herrera was abruptly stripped of her title and demoted 3 levels to essentially to the bottom of the group she formerly led, the suit said. So that would wipe away about 15 years worth of her career because she wasn't the right skin color. Herrera said she was required to attend her replacement's promotion ceremony. Her repeated requests for a new workstation were met with her belongings being stuffed into boxes and stashed under a headquarters stairwell before she was ultimately transferred to the Bronx. When her replacement took her spot, another plaintiff, Jaye Murray, the executive director of the Office of Counseling Support Programs, was told that she would now report to her replacement, representing a demotion. The only explanation Robinson purportedly gave Murray, who had been with the Department of Education since 2006, was that the department decided to go in a different direction, despite Murray's own record of developing anti-bias workshops. It wasn't long before Murray was demoted another 2 rungs, ultimately settling below the new OCSP head Jillian Smith, who began a campaign to degrade Murray by forcing her to report her work every 30 minutes. And Murray would learn, going over her head and behind her back to direct Murray's last 2 subordinates. So she's explaining a work environment where she needs to report to her superior what she's doing literally every 30 minutes, as if she had no ability to be productive on her own without reporting to her boss every 30 minutes. In addition to that, her supervisor was dealing with her own subordinates, so basically undercutting her on the job of what she was trying to do. They're deliberately, obviously trying to make it so that it's impossible to work there so that she would hopefully resign. The third plaintiff, Lois Feijoo, claims that she was among the earliest casualties of Carranza's overhaul. While Carranza was appointing his first deputy chancellor, he tapped Cheryl Watson Harris, who is black, over Feijoo, who is white and was Watson Harris's boss, without so much as even interviewing Feijoo. While Feijoo supervised all 46 other Department of Education superintendents, Watson Harris didn't even have the necessary license to be the first deputy chancellor. So Carranza instituted a transition period so she could obtain it, her lawsuit said. Feijoo was not only leapfrogged by Watson Harris, but soon saw her underling replace her with Donald Conyers, who is black, and promote 9 employees into a new role, executive superintendent. Some of those 9 people who were promoted had no prior superintendent experience. None was a white woman. All were now above Feijoo. And here's what their lawyer had to say. Quote, as opposed to being assessed by their results or by their actions, our clients were removed from their respective responsibilities and replaced by less qualified or not qualified individuals due to their gender and the color of their skin. The Department of Education responded to an inquiry from the New York Post, and here's what they had to say. Quote, we hired the right people to get the job done for kids and families, and these claims of reverse racism have no basis in fact. Well, they had basis enough to pay out over $2 million on this claim, but they got away cheap because they were being sued for $90 million from the New York Post. New York City Department of Education employees who claim racial discrimination over demotion can pursue their bombshell $90 million lawsuit, according to the judge. And this is what killed New York City on this. They couldn't have the publicity. They couldn't afford to be put into a position where they'd have to pay out $90 million, so they wound up settling. Here's what the 3 women who were suing had to say. Quote, this demotion and sidelining has had a tremendous negative impact on my life, said Herrera, who had been working as the CEO of Office Safety and Youth Development when she was abruptly stripped of her title and replaced. Quote, I have suffered from depression and trauma from being unjustly removed from my position, she said. I was subjected to intentional public embarrassment and social isolation. Feijoo, who had been working as a senior superintendent for labor and policy when she was replaced by an underling, said her career has been permanently altered as a result. No question about that. That's beyond dispute. Quote, opportunities to continue to do what I love have disappeared. Most importantly, the opportunity to continue to serve the students of New York City is forever lost. Both Herrera and Feijoo have since retired from the Department of Education, while Murray still holds a position but works from home with no title, no supervisor, and no distinct role. So she can still get a check, but her responsibilities just kind of float around in the air. At the time the lawsuit was launched, Carranza's Department of Education was accused of a crusade against toxic whiteness, with a push to overhaul leadership and a change in attitude at the department. And the good news is New York City backed down and agreed to settle the case. From the New York Post, New York City to pay $2.1 million in race discrimination settlement with 3 educators over their toxic whiteness accusation lawsuit. The city will pay a total of $2.1 million to 3 white Department of Education executives demoted under ex-school's Chancellor Richard Carranza and replaced by less qualified people of color, they charged. Lois Herrera, Jaye Murray, and Feijoo, who will receive $700,000 each, reached a settlement 3 months after a judge ruled they offer evidence of race-based discrimination in Carranza's Department of Education, and that paved the way for a June trial. That would have been June 2024. Quote, this landmark case is a resounding affirmation that discrimination of any form should not be tolerated in educational institutions, regardless of the race of those negatively impacted, according to their lawyer, Davida Perry, who told that to the Post. She's absolutely right, and you go get them, Davida Perry. A lot of times you don't win this thing unless you've got a passionate, dedicated lawyer who's not afraid of the blowback for going after the case. So good job on Davida Perry for really pushing this and fixing this problem. Filed 5 years ago, the lawsuit charged Carranza waged a crusade against toxic whiteness in the city's Department of Education. Herrera, who had a Harvard master's degree, was working successfully as the CEO of Office and Safety and Youth Development when one of Carranza's deputy chancellors abruptly stripped her title and replaced her with a less qualified black man, Mark Rampersant, who held a GED, the suit alleged. So that's a GED is a high school equivalent. He didn't even graduate high school, much less graduate college. She had graduated Harvard, had a master's degree, and had earned her position over years of service. Murray, then executive director of the Office of Counseling Support Programs, was told to report to Rampersant, the first in a series of demotions. She still works at the Department of Education with sharply reduced responsibilities. Feijoo, then senior supervising superintendent who oversaw 46 Department of Education superintendents, which is actually a very big role, was replaced by an underling, someone reporting to her, Cheryl Watson Harris, who is black and at the time lacked the required New York licensing. I know a little bit about this in terms of the New York licensing for education because of my family relationships. You can't get an administrative position unless you've gone through certain courses and passed those courses. To give someone that position, whether or not you take it away from someone else, that's another whole issue. That's illegal. You can't do that. You can't say, I'm going to put you in this administrative job where you have these additional responsibilities, but you haven't gone through the proper training for it and earned the license to do that. It's extremely out of the ordinary and completely illegal. Feijoo left the Department of Education for another job in November 2019, and Watson Harris quit in June 2020 for an ill-fated top spot in Georgia. What happened when this person who was handpicked to replace these toxic white supposedly employees went to Georgia? She got fired. Didn't work out. An internal Department of Education email written by the Department of Education's then chief operating officer said Bill de Blasio, who appointed Carranza as chancellor in 2018, was fixated on diversity. In sworn depositions, both de Blasio and Carranza insisted they wanted to hire the most qualified candidates, but also leaders who looked like New York City. Those picked to replace the 3 women got the jobs after a tap on the shoulder without the positions being advertised and other candidates being interviewed, according to their lawsuit. That's also not something you're supposed to do. This is actually like a government job. You can't just hire people of a certain skin color, fire people that have already earned their positions, and not even interview other people to compete for that job. You can't do that, and they did it. Carranza quit the top Department of Education job in February 2021, and de Blasio left office December 31st, 2021. Now the 3 women feel justified and vindicated by the resolution of this significant legal battle, according to their attorney. Quote, they hope the light that was shed on the Department of Education's policies will help other institutions understand that every individual deserves to be treated with dignity and fairness. The city admitted no wrongdoing in the settlement. That's part of the bonus of just writing a check. You could say, hey, we'll write you a check. We just don't want to admit wrongdoing. And if they want to accept that, then the people who sue accept that, and that's the end of that. Here's what New York City's law department had to say about the settlement. Quote, the Department of Education and City are fully committed to fair and inclusive employment practices, and we maintain that these claims lack merit. Nevertheless, settlement of this long-standing case was in the best interest of all parties. Yeah, because they were going to have to go to trial in June, and that was indefensible. What the Department of Education did was ridiculous and completely indefensible. They would have lost badly if they went on trial. But it is always a risk when you sue someone. You don't know what's going to happen when you go into court. You don't know if there's going to be a surprise of some kind. You don't know what the jury's going to say. You don't know what the judge is going to say. Sometimes it's better to just take the win and take the money, and that's what these ladies did. I have a lot of respect for them for being fighters, and a lot of us are seeing this story. Maybe we didn't get the $90 million win, but we got a $2.1 million win. That's a pretty good win. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.